It all began on a Monday morning, the kind of morning where nothing is supposed to go wrong. The sun was shining through the blinds in soft golden streaks. My coffee was still hot, and my 2-year-old golden retriever, Max, was curled up on the couch like a living teddy bear. I had just moved into Willow Creek Estates, a quiet, gated community tucked just outside of Austin, Texas. It was my first home purchase after saving for years and escaping the overpriced hellscape of downtown apartments. I thought I had made it. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a white picket fence, a 2-car garage, and a small backyard for Max to roam. Everything looked perfect, until I found the envelope. It was tucked beneath my windshield wiper. At first I thought it was a flyer, maybe a lawn service advertisement or some welcome to the neighborhood postcard. But as I pulled it from the glass, I saw the stark red stamp across the top. Notice of HOA violation. I blinked. A violation? For what? I tore it open right there in my driveway. The letter, written in aggressive legalese, informed me that I had been cited for improper vehicle storage in a visible area, which, according to Willow Creek's HOA regulations, was not permitted. The kicker? The vehicle in question was my own car, parked inside my own garage. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe they meant the car had been sticking out. Maybe the garage door had been left open. Maybe someone got the address wrong. But the letter was clear. The garage had been visibly open for longer than the designated maximum time period, which, according to the fine print, was 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I had never lived in an HOA-governed community before. The term homeowners association sounded friendly enough, like some kind of neighborhood watch group that occasionally organized block parties and enforced trash day rules. Wrong. Willow Creek's HOA operated more like a private government, with an unnerving amount of power. They could levy fines, place liens on homes, and even, under extreme circumstances, force foreclosure proceedings. I had signed the documents during my home closing in a blur, initialing next to every clause without understanding half of them. I guess most people do that, until something like this happens. I walked inside and sat at the kitchen island, letter in hand, heart pounding. The notice said I owed $150, payable within 10 days, or risked additional penalties, for leaving my garage door open, for 20 minutes. I scrolled through the HOA's online portal, trying to find a phone number. The site was a maze of outdated PDFs, broken links, and forms that required a login I hadn't yet set up. That's when I decided to knock on a few doors. My next-door neighbor, Mrs. Hawthorne, was in her 60s, a retired school teacher who always seemed to be watering her hydrangeas. She had a calm, grandmotherly demeanor, until I brought up the HOA. "Oh, honey," she sighed, "you're not the first." She told me about a couple down the street who got fined for leaving their garbage bins visible from the road 3 minutes before pickup time. Another family received a violation for having their basketball hoop slightly tilted. One guy apparently got written up because his truck had commercial signage on it. He owned a landscaping company and parked his vehicle in his own driveway overnight. It was madness. But according to Mrs. Hawthorne, no one ever fought the HOA, because no one ever won. She lowered her voice as if someone might be listening. "They have cameras, you know, all over the neighborhood. And Karen McLean? She's the one to watch out for. HOA president for 8 years now. Never been challenged." I had heard the name in passing. Karen McLean. A woman whose first name was a cliché punchline, yet apparently had the power to make people cry over flower beds. I thanked Mrs. Hawthorne, returned home, and told myself I'd pay the fine and move on. After all, it was just $150. A stupid, outrageous, infuriating fee, but maybe not worth the trouble of fighting it. But then it happened again. 3 days later, another letter. Same red stamp. Same envelope. This time, the violation claimed I had operated noisy machinery during prohibited hours. The machinery? My garage door. Apparently, I had opened it at 6:57 a.m. on a workday, 3 minutes before the approved 7 a.m. start time. I kid you not. This time, the fine was $250 and came with a warning. Repeat infractions may result in disciplinary escalation, including legal fees. That was it. I wasn't going to roll over anymore. I dug up my HOA handbook, read every soul-crushing line, and made an Excel sheet. I began highlighting inconsistencies, outdated rules, and vague terminology. If they were going to come for me, I wanted to be ready. And then I noticed something. A clause in the rules stated that all violations must include photographic or video evidence, but my violation letters included none. No timestamps, no photos, nothing, just claims, typed on an official-looking letterhead. I emailed the HOA board, formally requesting evidence of both infractions. No reply. I called the number on the website and left voicemails. No one called back. That weekend, I got up early and walked around the neighborhood. That's when I noticed the black SUV parked diagonally across the street from my house. Inside, a woman with sunglasses scribbling in a notepad. She was watching my house. I walked toward the SUV, and it pulled away before I reached it. Later, I'd find out it belonged to HOA compliance chairperson Rita Feldman, Karen McLean, best friend and right-hand enforcer. Something was deeply wrong here. 2 weeks later, I decided to attend my first community HOA meeting. It was held at the local rec center, inside a sterile conference room filled with folding chairs and lukewarm coffee. About 30 people showed up. Most of them sat quietly. A few nodded as Karen McLean, tall, sharp-blazered, and smiling with all the warmth of a tax audit, stood at the front with a printed agenda. The meeting was orderly until I raised my hand. "Hi," I said, standing. "I'm new to Willow Creek. I've received 2 fines in the last week, both of which, in my opinion, are based on unreasonable and unsupported claims. I'd like to see the evidence used to issue them." The room shifted uncomfortably. Karen looked at me for a moment, then smiled tightly. "Our records are reviewed internally, and if you wish to contest a violation, you may request a private hearing with the Compliance Committee." "I've requested evidence," I replied. "No one has responded." "That's because we're not obligated to share those materials unless subpoenaed," she said flatly. "If you feel that strongly, you're welcome to pursue legal action at your own expense." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about community. This wasn't about standards. It was about control. And I was done being controlled. The letter came on a Friday evening, slipped under my front door like a threat from a gangster film. It wasn't stamped this time, just plain white with a printed note that read, "You have been scheduled for a compliance hearing with the Willow Creek HOA Compliance Committee. Location, Rec Center, Room B date, Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Attendance is mandatory to dispute violations. Failure to attend may result in additional penalties." So there it was, my chance to fight back. I had 5 days to prepare, and I wasn't going in blind. That weekend, I locked myself in the study with 3 highlighters, a mug of coffee the size of my dog, and the full 97-page Willow Creek HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or, as I started calling it, the Bible of Control. Page after page was filled with confusing legal language and contradictory rules. One section allowed the HOA to define acceptable landscaping without resident input. Another section gave them the right to issue fines based on credible witness reports without requiring photographic or recorded proof. But it was Section 14.3 that caught my eye. All homeowners have the right to request an impartial compliance review, which must be judged by no less than 3 board members, none of whom may have a conflict of interest with the homeowner in question. That was key. If Karen McLean or her enforcers were judging my case, I had grounds to demand an independent panel, and I planned to. 2 days before the hearing, I ran into Mrs. Hawthorne again. She was trimming her roses when I mentioned the hearing. She looked around, leaned in, and said, "You're not alone, you know. There's a group of us." I blinked. "A group?" She nodded. "We call ourselves the Porchlight Coalition. We meet once a month, quietly. Too many of us have been fined, threatened, or publicly humiliated by the board. Karen runs this place like it's her personal fiefdom, but there are cracks forming." That night, I attended their secret gathering. 10 people, all different ages, all different stories. One had been fined for having unapproved grass. Another was nearly evicted after planting tomatoes in his front yard. Each of them handed me documents, letters, photos, screenshots, violations that made mine look mild. It wasn't just a pattern, it was a campaign. I wasn't just dealing with an overzealous HOA. I was facing something worse. By Tuesday, I had built a three-pronged defense. The timeline. My garage door, they claimed, had been open over 20 minutes. I pulled up my Nest Cam footage. It showed 17 minutes and 42 seconds between opening and closing, well within reason. Lack of evidence. Neither violation letter provided proof. According to Section 9.5, violations must include evidence or a signed statement from a board member, neither of which I received. Conflict of interest. I confirmed through public records that Rita Feldman, the same woman who had been watching my house from the SUV, was listed as the reporting party. That's a conflict. She couldn't legally sit on my review board. I printed everything out, organized it into a binder, and walked into that hearing, ready for war. Wednesday evening. Rec Center, Room B. 3 folding tables, 2 flags, and 5 chairs lined up like some kind of tribunal. Karen McLean sat in the center, flanked by 2 others. Mark Douglas, an accountant who never made eye contact, and Cheryl Liu, a retired dentist with a tight-lipped frown. And sure enough, Rita Feldman sat at the end, tapping her pen like a drumbeat. I took a seat across from them. My palms were sweating, but my voice was calm. Karen smiled with the iciness of a winter storm. "We're here to review 2 violations issued to you, Mr. Carter," she began, folding her hands. "You may speak." I opened my binder. "Thank you. First, I'd like to request that Ms. Feldman recuse herself from the review due to direct involvement in both complaints." Karen blinked. "Ms. Feldman is here as an observer. She's listed in both violation reports as the reporting officer," I interrupted. Per Section 14.3 of the HOA Charter, her presence violates the impartiality requirement. Rita's face reddened. Karen leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, we will decide what's appropriate." "Then I'd like this hearing postponed until a compliant panel can be formed. I'm formally requesting an adjournment, and I'll be submitting this request in writing." I handed her a copy. She stared at the paper like it had personally insulted her. "This is irregular," she hissed. "But not against the rules," I replied. Mark Douglas, for the first time, cleared his throat. "He's technically correct," he muttered. "If the reporting party is present as judge, that's grounds for a challenge." Karen's jaw clenched. They called a 10-minute recess. I stood outside under the awning, heart pounding like a war drum. When they returned, Rita was gone. They agreed to proceed with a new panel next week. But before I left, Cheryl Liu, the quietest member, handed me something discreetly as I passed her. A flash drive. Back home, I plugged it in. On it were internal HOA communications, leaked emails and documents. They outlined strategies for targeting non-compliant newcomers, especially those without prior HOA experience. Karen had written in one email, "We must maintain order. If a few examples must be made, so be it." Another thread included a list of watch targets, residents marked for routine observation. My name was third on that list. They were actively monitoring us, targeting us. And now I had proof. I called the Porchlight Coalition. "This is bigger than we thought," I told them. We started compiling everything. Violation histories, inconsistent rulings, reports of harassment. We planned to submit it all to the County Housing Authority, the State HOA Regulatory Board, and the local news. But first, we needed one final piece, surveillance confirmation. One of the coalition members, a former network engineer, offered to scan the neighborhood's wireless frequencies. What he found made us all sick. The HOA had installed hidden cameras, not just in common areas, but aimed at specific homes. They were powered through solar panels camouflaged as utility upgrades. Every violation had been pre-watched. The next compliance hearing would not be a simple dispute. It would be the opening shot in a war. Karen didn't know it yet, but her days as Queen of Willow Creek were numbered, because this time the neighbors were fighting back. It was the morning of the second hearing, and I was sitting in my car, staring at the rec center like it was a courthouse from an old western. My binder sat on the passenger seat, fatter than ever, now filled with evidence, whistleblower emails, and digital photos of the hidden cameras scattered throughout Willow Creek. I wasn't nervous anymore. I was ready. But this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every neighbor who had been harassed, every homeowner who had paid a fine in silence, every family that had almost lost their home because of a petty violation and a power-drunk president named Karen McLean. Today was the beginning of the end. This time, the hearing was held in a larger room at the rec center. Word had spread. At least 30 residents showed up, many of whom were part of the Porchlight Coalition, though none of us had spoken about it publicly. Karen wasn't on the panel this time. Neither was Rita Feldman. Instead, the board had brought in 3 independent HOA members from a neighboring community. On paper, they were neutral. In practice, still skeptical. The lead reviewer, a thin man with wireframe glasses named Mr. Pennington, invited me to speak. I stood and calmly delivered my case. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here not only to dispute the violations against me, but to expose a system of targeted surveillance, inconsistent rule enforcement, and abuse of power by our HOA leadership. Gasps rippled through the audience. I showed the video of my garage door timer, 17 minutes and 42 seconds. Then I showed screenshots of emails leaked by Cheryl Liu, proving that Karen had actively compiled a watch list of homeowners. Then came the photos, camouflaged surveillance cameras mounted on lampposts, gutters, and even birdhouses, aimed at specific homes. No one consented to this level of surveillance. No one knew. No one agreed to be spied on in their own yards, driveways, or through their living room windows. I paused. Then I delivered the final blow. These actions violate not only the HOA's own charter, but state laws around privacy, property rights, and HOA governance. And unless immediate action is taken, I'll be taking this to the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, the press, and legal counsel. For a moment, the room was silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. And soon, the room erupted into applause. After the hearing, Mr. Pennington pulled me aside and said, "You've made a compelling case. We'll be reviewing everything you've submitted. Expect a decision within a week." That night, I didn't sleep. Neither did Karen. Because the next morning, a local news van pulled into Willow Creek. One of the Porchlight Coalition members, Theo, had a cousin who worked at a news station. He sent the story, along with the photos, videos, and documents. The station aired the story that evening. Residents in an upscale gated community outside Austin say their homeowners association has been secretly spying on them with hidden cameras, issuing thousands of dollars in questionable fines, and operating more like a dictatorship than a neighborhood board. The piece featured anonymous interviews, blurred faces, and whistleblower evidence. Cheryl Liu's voice was altered, but her words hit hard. They wanted compliance, total control. It stopped being about protecting property values and became about punishing anyone who didn't fall in line. By the end of the day, the HOA's email server crashed from complaints. Karen McLean? Silent. For the first time in 8 years, she wasn't in control. 4 days later, every home in Willow Creek received a letter, not from Karen, but from the state attorney general's office. An investigation had been launched, citing evidence of potential privacy violations, fraudulent fines, and abuse of power. The office announced it would be reviewing the HOA's financial records, surveillance practices, and board election procedures. This wasn't just about garage doors anymore. This was about corruption, real corruption. The Porchlight Coalition went public. No more secrecy, no more whispers. We held an emergency town hall at the rec center. Flyers were posted on every mailbox. Over 150 people showed up, nearly every resident in Willow Creek. I stood at the front with a microphone. If we want change, we need to take back our board. We need new leadership, new rules, transparency, fairness. This isn't just about fighting Karen. It's about making sure no one ever does this to us again. We called for a vote of no confidence in the current board. Per HOA bylaws, a special election could be triggered if 60% of residents signed a petition. By the end of that night, we had 72%. But Karen wasn't going down quietly. 2 days before the scheduled vote, she filed a lawsuit. She claimed that the leaked emails had been stolen, that the surveillance footage had been taken out of context, and that the special election was illegitimate and mob-driven. She even tried to block the vote in court. It backfired. The judge not only refused to block the election, he ordered a temporary injunction halting all HOA fines and enforcement actions until the investigation concluded. Karen had lost the narrative, and she had lost the power. On the day of the special election, neighbors stood in line, chatting like they were waiting for concert tickets. People who had never spoken before were suddenly sharing stories, frustrations, and high fives. The vote took 3 hours. The results? Unanimous. Karen McLean was removed as president. Rita Feldman was barred from holding any HOA position again. 3 new board members were elected, all members of the Porchlight Coalition. And me? I was offered the compliance chair position. I declined. I didn't fight for power, I fought for peace. 2 months later, Willow Creek felt different. The cameras were gone, the fines were reviewed, and nearly all of them were voided. Refunds were issued. New bylaws were voted in, with input from actual residents. No more absurd garage door timers, no more watch lists, no more fear. Neighbors who once waved from a distance now invited each other to cookouts and block parties. We had reclaimed our community, not through rage, not through revenge, but through resistance, proof, and persistence. 2 months after the special election, Willow Creek felt reborn. The air was lighter. The paranoia was gone. No more cameras hidden in lampposts. No more ridiculous fines for wind chimes or unauthorized front porch plants. Kids rode bikes again. Dogs barked freely. Lawns no longer felt like battlefields of compliance. But just when we thought it was over, Karen McLean came back. And she didn't come empty-handed. One of the first acts of the new board was ordering a forensic audit of the HOA's finances. We'd suspected shady dealings for a while, but the numbers we got back left the entire neighborhood stunned. Over $187,000 had been spent in the past 2 years with no clear documentation. That included $26,000 for security services that were never actually contracted, $1,100 for landscaping analysis reports from a company that didn't exist, $40,000 in administrative bonuses, which just so happened to line up with Karen and Rita's names on the bank statements. Even worse, $32,000 was spent on surveillance equipment, not just installed in public spaces, but pointing at homes. This wasn't just overreach, this was embezzlement, criminal surveillance, wire fraud. Karen's return came in the form of a thick envelope, delivered by certified mail to every resident. Inside, a glossy 8-page letterhead titled, "An Open Letter to the Residents of Willow Creek, The Truth You Were Never Told." It was vintage Karen, dramatic, defensive, and dripping with faux concern. She claimed she had been unfairly ousted in a coup led by radicals, that surveillance was necessary due to rising crime, and that all financial transactions were lawful and authorized by the board at the time. Then came the threat. I have filed a defamation and wrongful termination lawsuit seeking damages exceeding $500,000. I intend to restore my good name and bring the truth to light. The neighborhood absolutely exploded. The lawsuit divided people. Briefly, some worried it might have merit. Karen was clever, and she had ruled the HOA for nearly a decade. Maybe she knew how to protect herself. But then, the new board released a community memo with attachments. They included screenshots of forged vendor invoices, bank transfers to personal accounts, Fake board votes retroactively approved using altered meeting minutes. It wasn't just fraud, it was premeditated theft. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was packed. Karen arrived in a sharp blue pantsuit, chin high, walking like someone still convinced she was the queen of Willow Creek. Her attorney, a slick-talking, big-smiling man who clearly thought this would be an easy payday. But what they didn't expect was us. A full gallery of Willow Creek residents sat behind the defense table. Dozens of us, all with matching blue pins, each one shaped like a garage door. It had become a symbol of our resistance, a symbol of what started it all. The court heard 3 days of testimony. The highlights? Cheryl Liu testifying about forged board approvals. An IT specialist explaining how HOA emails were deleted in bulk the day after the audit was ordered. A mother describing how her autistic son had a breakdown after discovering a blinking red light in a shrub outside his window. A camera planted by HOA contractors. By the end of day 3, Karen's lawyer requested a settlement. The terms of the settlement were simple. Karen McLean would drop her lawsuit. She would be barred from serving on any HOA board in the state for life. She would repay $94,000 in restitution or face criminal charges. And the cherry on top? She was ordered to write a public apology, to be posted in the rec center and distributed to every resident in Willow Creek. It read, "To the residents of Willow Creek, I acknowledge that my actions, however well-intended, caused harm, mistrust, and fear. I apologize for overstepping my duties and betraying your confidence. I accept full responsibility and hope this letter begins the long road to healing. Karen McLean." Some believed it, most didn't, but no one cared, because Karen was gone. Over the next few months, something magical happened. A new community newsletter was launched, written by residents. All HOA board meetings were now open-door, live-streamed, and documented with real votes. Instead of fines, the board implemented a community engagement model where disputes were solved with conversation, not punishment. And once a month, we held neighbor night, an open potluck where people shared stories, jokes, even local business recommendations. The porch lighters, they became the new leadership, but they didn't act like rulers. They acted like neighbors. One afternoon, I pulled into my driveway after work and sat for a moment, staring at the garage. Funny, isn't it? How everything started because I parked in my own garage. Because I kept it open just long enough for someone to call it non-compliant. I rolled up the door, stepped out, and looked at the neighborhood around me. Kids were chalking the sidewalks. Someone was grilling. Music played softly from a backyard speaker, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like home. 6 months later, Willow Creek was profiled in a national news story titled, "The Neighborhood That Overthrew Its HOA and Won." I watched the segment with a smile. They even included a photo of the blue garage door pin. People from across the country began writing to us. Emails, letters, messages from folks stuck in HOA nightmares of their own. Asking how we did it. Asking how to take back control. And we helped. We formed a nonprofit. We wrote a guidebook. We gave others the tools to resist, the same way we did. Because it was never just about me or my garage or Karen. It was about something bigger. Something worth defending. Your home. Your peace. Your right to live free from fear in the place you call home. And that's how neighborhood nightmares become neighborhood victories.